So from among the 7 questions or points, we have chosen one actually, and added another one, which we felt are essential for the process of the NOC. So these are to develop a vision, as well as to look at the governance issues. In terms of vision, what the vision should look like and how it should be developed, we thought that the vision should tell us what the NOC will achieve for biodiversity, but it should also include or explain to people why the NOC is special, why it is needed, and why it is important. And also, if possible, how the NOC will achieve this. One possible vision or goal could be to become a one-stop shop for biodiversity questions in 3 years, but we felt this approach is a little bit too more the pragmatic something, so the vision must go beyond this. And in terms of how to develop it, how the vision should be developed, we found that there are already some guiding principles in the white paper which are very helpful in terms of how the vision should be developed. So I just very quickly go through them. So when developing the vision, we should promote access and enable wide participation, ensure broad collaboration, build on the enthusiasm of individuals, avoid duplication, strive for relevant and up-to-date information, ensure quality, minimize bias, ensure fair and transparent process, and include reflexivity and learning. So this was on the how, and with whom. There we felt, as usual, that we shouldn't stay among us. It's not the usual suspects who should develop the vision for the NOC, but we need to involve other stakeholders, a wider constituency. So the vision should be co-designed. This is very important. And who should be those? Of course, except for the natural scientists, it could be social scientists, scientists from other fields, the policymakers, business, as well as practitioners. And then we try to discuss how this co-design process could look like, how could we involve these people, because we often face challenges when we try to do this. So we thought that we first ourselves, the conservation community, develops something like a proto-vision, and then goes with this proto-vision to all those other groups and constituencies. How do we do this? We had a little bit of debate on this. Shall we go by as individuals, use our existing contacts, organize big conferences and events where we invite all those others, or we also know that there are existing fora where these, which work as an interface between different groups, for example, between agri and conservation groups. So it would be very useful to use these existing fora which try to make these people come together. So these were just a few ideas. What we think is surely important is when we try to involve other stakeholders, is to potentially use facilitators or professional moderators, because that could be more effective, and we shouldn't shy away from spending a bit of money on such things as well. Okay, and then the second point we emphasized was governance. That wasn't actually among the points, but somehow from all the comments and views expressed, it turned out that this is something which we might have overlooked, but could be really important. And there we didn't come too far, but rather discussed why is this important, what we need to discuss. And we concluded that it would be for the NOC very important to have clear operating rules and conditions. It should be a very transparent process how the NOC coordination body is elected, because there are very important issues of legitimacy. This is also connected to who controls and to who has access to the network. And it would be important to have a long-term mandate for the coordination body. So these are more or less questions which lead us into further debates. But we felt we also cannot discuss it very much now until we haven't chosen the model for the NOC, which is, of course, a discussion for the afternoon. And once we have decided ourselves for the model, then we can go back to these governance questions. Thank you.
There's time for one or two questions, if there are any, or additional points. If not, thank you very much. The second group was involvement of, the group was on the involvement of different groups. Who will speak for that? Thanks very much.
I was told to have just 3 or 4 sentences maximum. So, we are not having that in the computer because we are for more traditional channels of communication. Okay, so we were having a homework on analyze how to include different groups in planning and implementing the NOC. And we retained actually the 3 most, in our opinion, of course, topics. We did it by voting, and those topics are how to map stakeholders and how to acknowledge their motivation to join NOC. Then the second topic was how to include diversity of people, diversity of stakeholders and experts from the very beginning of the process of joining NOC. We've had a hot discussion how to define stakeholders and experts, but then I will omit because of the time. And the third topic was how to propose any incentives for those people who will join NOC. And this is actually something which we invented that topic as the 8th, having given 7 from you. So the conclusion and recommendation we have from our group is for the first topic that you need to be very proactive, outreaching, using different communication channels, but those channels should be very much adapted to a particular group of stakeholders or expert you're working with. Then the second topic, the recommendation for that is there is a definitely need to be very explicit, to have a coordinating body, and that was underlined many times, to be sure that things which are going on in the projects are somehow balanced. And then the incentives, which we spend a lot of time on discussing, incentives or gratification, if you like, for, again, different groups of people. We didn't want it to be very, let's say, materialistic, but we thought that any kind of gratification, not necessarily the economic one, is needed to somehow attract people to join the NOC. And it should be definitely related to their daily practices. Otherwise, they are simply probably not interested. And again, to gratify people differently depending on the particular group of stakeholders or experts. We also somehow suggested that we need more background or more info from the coordination of NOC, because we don't know what the resources are, so what we could, if it is going to be real practical advice to the NOC, then we need to have more details. Yeah, thank you.
Any questions, points, additions to that? No. In that case, thanks very much. And what have we got? Role of communication.
Yeah, we had a very lively and enjoyable discussion, and I've got 3 points that we agreed at the end that I would convey to you all. The first was that some of the things that were highlighted as communication issues we felt would be best as guiding principles that should underlie the communications activity. The first of those was openness and transparency. Somebody had written that down as one of the key things. And I think our group agreed that it was important that all of the work within the network should be done under the principle that it would be published as open data at the end of it, and that people who approach the network to do closed research should be turned away. The second one is perhaps an obvious one, is the clear use of terminology and avoiding using acronyms. Even the acronym NOC, I think, is not very helpful because, as we all know, acronyms, while they shorten communication, they exclude outsiders, so it should be a fundamental principle to avoid acronyms where possible. The third was in the use of technology. Obviously, technology is wonderful for communications, but we felt that it should be kept as simple as possible, and that, of course, technology is not a substitute for face-to-face contact. Particularly, in some countries, you need to meet people face-to-face to make connections, and indeed that's probably true with everyone, really. The second point was about the involvement of communication specialists, and we felt that needed to be considered in the preparation phase. So whilst forming the network, it was important to involve communication specialists now, before things get on too much further. But then also during the operational phase. For the network to really work, it needs communication specialists to be given the same attention and priority as the scientists. So we felt that 50% of the people within the network secretariat should be working in some way on communications. Of course, those people could well be scientists, because some of the most passionate communicators can be scientists themselves, but there should be that clear emphasis on communications within the secretariat. The third point was on the need for a communication strategy to guide all of the communications throughout the NOC, and obviously that's a standard practice, really. But it was just, our group wanted to make clear that communication is not just a one-way process, it's more about dialogue. So there was a feeling that we should have a separate plan, one to think about dialogue and one to think about dissemination of the results, and to treat those aspects separately. And also within the communication plan, it's important to include both internal communication. For such a complex and international network, it's going to be very complex, so there needs to be a plan to manage that internal communication. But also for external communication, there should be a separate plan. And that should obviously take account of the different audiences we heard in the last presentation, the particular needs of those audiences, and what the value proposition is, to use a marketing term, what the network can do for those audiences. Why should they be interested in it? So I suppose one thing I should say also is that there was a lot of debate about whether the network was attempting to involve the public or not. We didn't reach a consensus on that. Obviously, if it is to involve the public, then it needs a lot of resources to do that. And that discussion needs to be had now to see whether that is a priority or not. Thank you.
Any questions? I'll ask a question. Did you talk about social media, particularly Twitter?
We did a little bit, but I think we sort of felt that was, one of the tools that you would use, and it's not the answer to all problems. For particular audiences, Twitter might be important, but it's not the be-all and end-all.
Okay. And are there any questions coming in from Twitter? Those at the back of the room. Dear me, all those people on Twitter are letting us down. Okay, thank you very much. Nothing else? Okay. Usability of outputs. Does anybody want to? Andre.
Okay, so we were concerned about how to ensure that outputs are usable in the policy community, and we had time to discuss around 3 questions. Most of the additional comments that were posted in the poster with the initial questions, we did an initial exercise of trying to integrate these extra issues in the existing questions. And before going into each one of them, I should also say that the issue of scale was one of those extra issues that was not integrated into any one of the remaining others. So it was a standalone issue, and it was recurrent in the discussion. So this, are we just talking about European level, or does the concerns of a small community, is this relevant for the NOC or not? So the first question that we focused on was about planning a process which delivers outputs that meet the needs of the requester within the time budget available. And we try to understand how could we formally capture the needs of the requester. So we talked about an initial dialogue phase mainly between the KCB and the requester. This dialogue would focus on time and budget, and also on clarifying the question, because as it was referred several times here, sometimes the question is not clear to everybody involved. So then there would be a scoping process following this dialogue phase, where the KCB would be involved, the requester would be involved, but also additional experts, and other stakeholders should be identified at this phase in order to try to enrich the question and try to see what other angles are there to this question. And then there would be a revisit to the initial question, a revisit to the time and budget. So summing it up, this would come up in terms of a formal dialogue phase, initial phase, that would go into a scoping phase with more actors involved. There should be a protocol or a sort of methods involved in this process, because this will influence the time and the budget, and everybody should agree, even the requester should be able to more or less know what are the options, what are the methodological options, and which ones to choose. So this was basically about question 8. Another question was about identifying the target audience's information needs, the preferred communication tools and styles. I think some of the discussion is a little bit overlapping with what was just presented. So in terms of how to achieve this, we pretty much agree that there should be requester-defined targets. So which target audience is the requester thinking about, because this will change a lot in the process. But also the KCB itself, or the NOC, should also have some saying in terms of defining the target audiences. Then maybe in a second level, following these phases that I talked to you before, also some other stakeholder-defined targets. So this information needs would be identified in this second scoping phase. And important for this question would be in this second phase, people who are specialized in information and communication management should be involved. Once the target audience is identified, somebody with the appropriate skills and expertise should think and propose how to address this target audience. Then the final question that we focused on had to do with including social scientists and other knowledge sources. Originally, these were two separate questions, but we joined them up. And there was a lot of discussion about the composition of the KCB, and if the KCB should be representative of all relevant disciplines or not. And I think this is still an open discussion and quite a relevant one. And this, the second scoping phase would be really important to identify what are the needs for different knowledge sources. Another important issue that arose here was the question of gray literature in different languages. I think we didn't come up with a clear solution for this, but one of the possible solutions is when you broaden your request to the expert groups who are actually working in research institutes in different countries or regions, they can make some kind of work of synthesizing the work done in their own language and act like as an intermediate between, let's say, lower level also NGOs, etc., and the NOC itself. So they could help in this kind of translation and summing up grey literature in different languages. And maybe to finish, just say that associated with this question of requests coming from smaller organizations and how to involve, for example, a local NGO, the question of creating incentives to participate was brought up. So, yeah, how to involve a very small NGO. Do we need some nodes within the NOC that do the bridge between, let's say, the KCB and these lower level organizations? So, yeah, I think this was pretty much it, I guess.
Thank you. Questions or comments on usability of outputs? Grey literature issue absolutely clear. Okay, thank you very much. So the last group was on capacity building.
So our group discussed capacity building. There were 3 essential points we discussed. First of all, and it's actually a new issue, it's about capacity building within Europe. We thought that's very important. You have to take into account the different geographical regions within Europe. The different regions have different problems, different stakeholders, different capacities. And building this capacity means that you have to keep in mind this geographical balance in the things you do. And if you can achieve that, that's really an added value for the NOK, because it's never been done before. That's really to boldly go where no one has gone before. How should you do that? You have to, the ensuring of geographical balance, you have to make it in criteria in the things you do. Of course, depending on the question what's going in, but it has to be a criteria. You have to link with different groups, very important. Maybe you have to support the building of hubs, because we found out there aren't really any hubs, real hubs in the south and the eastern part of Europe. So you have to come up with something in that case. Who should be involved? Funders of the work of the NOK, of course. The IP-BES was mentioned, and the MEP. Okay, that was one point. And the other points which were essential in this capacity building are points that are really related. Strengthen links and develop collaborations with existing networks. Very important. If you want to let flow knowledge into a network and you want to get the best available knowledge, you have to really connect existing networks and use them. How should you do that? The NOK should have relations with other communities, with other different groups of people, different projects, different initiatives. Face-to-face contact is really, really important. You don't have to invite them, but you have to go there. Go to those hubs, initiatives, those conferences, visit them. And then they go to, you hope they go to us, seek that contact. Another way is you could contact flagship research groups, contact them in order to use the networks they have. That's a method you could use. And then our last point, developing capacity, including different knowledge sources. It is really an essential point in the capacity building. And how should you do that? We thought of merging fields of expertise. You have to establish working groups, including other sources of knowledge, social, economical, different fields of expertise. And you have to link with other learning societies. I hope I didn't forget anything. I think that's it.